Today we have something called AI, artificial intelligence. So you can put something into ChatGPT or one of the other AI engines, and the answer you get appears to be really intelligent, probably as intelligent, if not more intelligent, than most human beings can create. So it raises a question, and the question is this: are we really intelligent? If a machine, if a computer, if a robot can exceed our intelligence, then how intelligent are we? Or is it that we just believe we're intelligent? Now, I'm going to go into a topic now, which is something that completely changes your life if you get this. And the topic is this: you don't actually know what's going on. You think you know, but you don't. In all areas of your life, you have figured things out to be a certain way. Things are not that way. You believe they are, and you mistake your belief for reality. Years ago, there was a book, it's called Never Mistake a Memo for Reality. I just remember that book. I've never actually read it, but the title stands out. Never mistake a memo for reality. So my version of that is never mistake a belief for reality. Just because you are convinced, just because you believe something is true, doesn't make it true. It doesn't. I know you believe it does, but it doesn't. And that's how we get into trouble. We live our life as if we know what truth is, what reality is. And most of us, what we do, we go by our feelings. So we feel a certain way. Now, once you feel a certain way, you take that to be reality. So you say, I feel, and then whatever you feel, therefore, that must be the truth. It isn't. Your feelings are created by the beliefs you have acquired. It's like a self fulfilling prophecy. Now, in your life, when you live your life, something may trigger you. Many of us experience this. Somebody raises their voice, somebody shouts at me, somebody calls me a certain name, somebody looks at me a certain way, somebody does something which I consider rude. There's a million things. Now, what happens when I get triggered? Do I look at myself and say, hey, I got triggered? It must be a feeling I created. It must be some link I've made from something in the past. No, I don't do that. What do? You triggered me. You raised your voice. You are a rude person. The finger is always pointing outwards. Why? Why is that? Because I go by my feelings and I trust the feelings that they give me the correct information. They don't. Your feelings are misleading you. Your feelings are based on what happened in your past. Something in the present triggers something in the past. You don't know what that trigger is. You've long forgotten the incident. It could be something that happened when you were 5 years old. You've long forgotten that, but what you've retained is the trauma of it. When I say trauma, I mean there are small traumas and big traumas. So to a child, the slightest event is a trauma because everything's bigger than life. Everything's big. If they're left alone for 5 minutes and they wake up and they're all alone, that is trauma for the child. So you can't avoid this trauma. There's nothing you can do to avoid this trauma because the trauma is because the child doesn't understand the world he's living in yet. Everything doesn't make sense to the child. So those become your beliefs and they're acquired in childhood. And now you might be 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, and you're still living through those beliefs. That's why your life's not real. Your life doesn't work. Your life is dysfunctional. And then you, a dysfunctional person, goes and meets another dysfunctional person, and you call that a relationship. And what is it? It's a getting together of two dysfunctional people. Now, each one can see the dysfunction in the other, but what they can't see is the dysfunction in themselves. So each one says, "You're an idiot. My God, can't you see all the things? Look at this, look at that, look at the way you live, look." And there's a big list. But then the other person can say to you, "Look at yourself," because they've got their view of life and you've got your view. So in your view, you are always right. In their view, they are right. This is the whole of life in a nutshell. Everyone is right in their own world. And the way you do that is you issue a press release. A press release, companies do that in order to publicize their viewpoint. It's a form of marketing. Now, when you released that press release, you knew it wasn't true. It was just marketing bullshit. But after a while, you start believing your own bullshit. Once you start believing your own bullshit, it becomes your truth. It's not true, but you start believing it. There's a story. A man decides he wants to open a bank. So what he does, he finds this building, it's an empty building. He talks to the owner and he takes the lease on it. And then he gets the sign printed which says bank, BANK, bank. And then he waits. And eventually somebody comes in and they deposit £100 or $100. And the person gives him an account number, puts it on his computer, types it all out, gives him the evidence, and off he goes. And then a second, and a third, and a fourth. Before you know it, he's got hundreds of customers. Now, he's not actually a real bank. He just made it up. But people saw the sign, they believed it, they came in, they handed in their money. If they want their money back, he hands it back to them, takes the money off the account, and so on. He's effectively a bank. So now he goes to his own bank and withdraws the money and places it in the bank that he's created. Now he knows he's not a real bank, but when he sees 100 people depositing their money, coming in daily, depositing, withdrawing, he starts to believe his own press. He starts to think, I must be a bank because all these people have faith in me, they believe me. I must be a bank. You're not a bank. You know you're not a bank. And this is how we live our lives. We know that we're liars, we're fake, we do loads of things like that. But when we do it, we justify it and we have a reason. When somebody else does it, they're a liar, they're a bad person, they can't be trusted. This is how you create your version of reality. In your version of reality, you always come out smelling of roses. You always come out on top. You're always the good person. And this is one of the biggest traps. How do you manage to create this illusion of looking good? Looking to be the right person, looking to be the person that's got everything figured out and the person who is right and correct and doesn't make any mistakes, and everybody else is wrong. In my seminars, I ask a question. Raise your hands if you have ever met a bad person. And virtually everybody raises their hands. They know there are bad people in the world and they've met plenty of them. So then I say, the second question, raise your hand if you are one of them. Are you one of those bad people? Not a single hand is raised.